but I did dream that I would be sitting in an apartment just like this,
Yes.
in a city with glass windows, and I would be living this life.
Yeah.
Like, that's
Yeah.
what, in my head, I was like, I'm going to live in an apartment in a city, I'm going to be successful, and I'm going to have glass windows.
Raise a glass to the past, present, and future you with actress Danielle Monè Truitt as she dives into the beautiful complexities of life's journey through real, transparent conversation. All the women I've been made me into who I
Hey y'all, it's Danielle Monè Truitt. Welcome back to another episode of All the Women I've Been. Thank you to everybody who's a part of our little clique, our little community. Thank you for liking, subscribing, and sharing this podcast. I'm having so much fun, and today I have a really remarkable woman that's going to be on the show. She is a CNN news anchor and a Image Award nominee, and her name is Abby Phillip, and we are going to have a really incredible conversation that I can't wait for y'all to check out. So tune in to All the Women I've Been. Abby.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining me.
I'm so happy to.
Okay, so we met at Dinner with Bevy back in October. And that was, for those that don't know what Dinner with Bevy is, Bevy Smith is a TV personality, and she just has a gift for bringing women together. And so it was a group of 12 of us. And it really was a highlight of
It was incredible.
my 2024.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. And I got to meet you there, which is, I am not very good at like mingling, and I'm not the best at it. So I was very specific with, I was like, okay, this person seems like they have kind eyes.
Yeah, and I knew a few people there, but maybe I missed it. I didn't really know who was going to be there.
I didn't either.
Yeah. So I just was like, okay, well, I'll show up and see what happens.
See what it is. I had no idea what it was. She was like, do you want to come to this dinner? And I'm like, well, I'll say yes because it's Bevy,
Right.
you know. But we started talking, and you were one of the people that I, kind of clicked with there. And then we got to have lunch. And I wanted to have you on the podcast because I feel like you have a good story, and you're very inspirational to a lot of people. And I'm sure you probably know, I have my cousin actually works for CNN on the Anderson Cooper show, and she is in love. She literally loves you. Like, she's like, she's probably at work right now. Otherwise, she would be here fangirling. But yeah, just an inspiration to, Black women who are in journalism and kind of on that trajectory. And it's just awesome to see you, in that space. Congratulations on your Image Award nomination. That's so cool. So cool. But yeah, I wanted to get into, how you got your start, what gave you a passion for journalism.
Well, life is so, I think that when I talk about how I got here, I always like to preface it by saying, life is so unpredictable. And I think everything about the way that my life has transpired is really not necessarily what I thought it was going to be. It's not what I expected it to be. And I know that runs counter to this kind of popular belief that, okay, if you set out your intentions and
right. You manifest
everything, and you have to envision it, otherwise it's not going to happen. Everything you predicted is going to come true. That's not the way that it was for me. And I think that actually ended up being a beautiful thing for me. I mean, when I went to high school, public high school in Bowie, Maryland, graduated, I got into Harvard. That was the minute that my life changed.
Amazing.
But it changed in ways that I didn't understand. I mean, when I got to Harvard, I was so out of my depth. I didn't know what I was doing. I realized in that moment that my view of the world had been so narrow up until that point.
Yeah.
The only thing I knew that successful people did was they were either doctors or lawyers. That was it. Okay? So I was like, okay, obviously I'm going to be a doctor.
Right.
So that's kind of how I started out, thinking I was going to go to medical school, that I was going to make my parents proud, be a doctor, I was going to live this great life. And I remember when I was in high school, one of the few kind of like dreams that I had nothing to do with what I would do, but I did dream that I would be sitting in an apartment just like this,
Yes.
in a city with glass windows, and I would be living this life, like in a, that's what in my head I was like, I'm gonna live in an apartment in a city. I'm gonna be successful, and I'm gonna have glass windows.
I love it.
And like floor to ceiling windows.
Love it.
And there's something about that was so incredibly superficial, but it was really about like kind of, okay, like my physical space and like seeing that for myself. Anyway, I mean, long story short, I was not a doctor. Okay, I was not cut out for that. And I just kind of started from the bottom, like started from scratch. I was like, okay, time to learn some skills. Need to work on my writing. So I started working on the newspaper. And I was like, the goal of that was literally just to improve my writing.
And this was when you were at Harvard?
This was when I was at Harvard. Okay. And I started to do it, and I was like, this is fun. I started to enjoy it. I loved talking to people. I loved history. I loved learning about the civil rights movement. And when I was in college, the 2008 financial crisis happened. And so everybody around me was panicking.
Yeah.
And people were not getting jobs when they graduated. Journalism was kind of imploding, or at least people thought it was.
Right.
And I just said to myself, I was like, you know what? I will do this if I can. If I can find a job, if someone is willing to pay me to do this. I'm not a trust fund kid. I cannot go volunteer somewhere. I can't work for free.
I gotta work.
To be paid to work. And so I said, okay, I'll try, and if I can get paid to do this, I'll do it. And one internship led to another internship, led to a job, and that's how I ended up with my first job. I just did my best.
And what was your first job?
I was working at my internship was at Politico,
okay,
which had only existed at that point for like 2 years. It had literally just started.
Yeah.
And I was their first class of interns, and I showed up and, you know, no connections, nothing. I just was like, what do you need me to do? And they were like, okay, here's this book that was like this big. It's like 4 volumes. These are all the expenses for Capitol Hill offices, for senators and Congress people. Go through these books and find a story. And that's what I did. I just sat there, line by line, like it's like a spreadsheet except on paper. I know, I have to explain that. I mean, this wasn't even that long ago, but it was like not digitized.
Right.
It was on paper, and I went through it line by line, and I found a story, and it was my first front page story. I was an intern.
I love it.
I worked that summer. I did whatever they asked me to do. I tried to find stories. And then they offered me a job when I went back to school that fall. And I was like, thank God.
Yeah.
You know, because there was no room for error for me in my life. Like I don't have a safety net, right? I just was like, you got to work. You don't have a choice. Just get a job.
Yeah.
And so I did. And I mean, I thought I would be, you know, a print reporter for the rest of my career.
I was going to ask, what did you see yourself doing when you started?
I just wanted to I wanted to go work overseas. I wanted to be a foreign correspondent. I wanted to be an anonymous print journalist in the sense that the goal was not to be a known person. The goal was to tell stories. The goal was to investigate things, to find things out that people didn't know. There was absolutely zero thought to being on camera. I am an introvert. I do not seek out attention just by my very nature. I don't like it, and I still don't.
Right.
And so it just wasn't a thought of mine. But a lot of my early career, and I think really maybe the reason that I've been successful in the work that I've done, which is not to say that there have not been setbacks. It's not to say that I haven't screwed up or failed in jobs and all that stuff. But I've just tried to make myself useful. and to learn as much as I can. And sometimes I fall short of my own expectations of myself. I'm not motivated. I'm aimless. Maybe there have been periods when I've been at just low emotional points and work has not been, I haven't been able to do what I want to do in my job, but I just want, it's a survival mode kind of thing where I'm like, I got to just keep this job, be useful, improve my skills, learn something. And I've never had this like end game in mind where I'm like, oh, I'm going to be Gayle King. I'm going to be that person. Right. It's always been, I want to be good at this. How do I get good at it? And I think that's really helped me because it's not oriented around a particular job, which has opened my mind to the possibilities, because so many jobs that I've had, places I've worked, did not exist when I was 21. Right. It just wasn't a thing. The world that we live in now was not the world that I graduated into. My openness to the role being whatever is available to me that gives me the skills I need has been, I think, the number one thing that has helped me move within the ever-changing media landscape. And it's still changing as we sit here.
I think that's one of the very important things for people to realize, like when they are on a career journey, that the longer you're on it, depending on the way that you navigate it, like you said, like you were like, I wasn't manifesting. I wasn't like, I have to be this. There's a lack, what it is though, it's a lack of attachment to an outcome. What people don't realize is when you have a lack of an attachment to an outcome, you end up getting more than you could have ever asked for. I mean, even the Bible says that. Like, I will do exceedingly abundantly above what you ask or think. So just stay open on your path. And the idea of, I just want to make myself useful. I think that's something that people are not, they're thinking about, what can I get from this? How can I use this?
How does it make me feel? And when I talk to younger people, I'm just like, look, you need to understand that you are getting by giving, okay? So like you're there because you are an able body. Make yourself useful. Raise your hand, volunteer, walk into that office and say, is there anything I can help you with today? Or some task needs to be done. Hey, I can do that. I don't know what it is about. I feel like I said I'm not an old
this new generation.
But I just feel like this is not about you sacrificing for someone else. It's actually about how you get the most out of the experience. So it's a reframing of what it is. And I'm glad that you mentioned, what the Bible says about kind of letting go of the outcome, because I will tell you, I'm a pastor's kid. My dad was
Me
a pastor
too.
for a long
PK's
time.
baby.
And that is just ingrained in me. I think even from the beginning, when I got into Harvard, I was like, that's God.
That's amazing, though.
Because there's absolutely no reason that there's no reason that I would have gotten in except for the will of God. And in my mind, you don't have to, not everybody believes, I get it, but that's just how I was raised. And I had to let go of the outcome, because when you're not like, when growing up the way that we grew up, not always having very much, like there were so many things that I wanted. So many things that I worked really hard for that I just couldn't have. And when that's the case, you just let go of it.
And you just have those dreams about sitting in an apartment with windows.
You do your best. You do your best. You try your hardest, but you let go of the outcome. And when things come through for you, in my mind, I was like, yes, this might be like some percentage of my effort.
Right.
But a lot of this is fate and God's will and all of that other stuff. And that is kind of, look, however you want to interpret that in terms of your career, I think we overinterpret the degree to which our effort is producing results. Sometimes there's a lot of chance involved.
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
not to say that you should not put in the effort, but you have to
It's
understand
a mixture of it all.
It's a mixture of it all. And what is for you is going to come to you,
Absolutely.
and what's not is not.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's another thing about I ain't trying to preach to the people today, but Ecclesiastes talks about chance. Like, you know, and Christian people love to be like, it's not luck, you know. And I'm like, well, the Bible does talk, like, there is a little bit of luck. There is a lot of hard work, a lot of God's blessing, faith that produces the outcome of what you want, you know. I think it's remarkable that you went to Harvard. You know, there's not a bunch of us there, you know.
No.
What was that experience like?
It was really hard for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what people also don't understand about Harvard as a Black person there is that what I realized was that there were a lot of other Black people who did not grow up the way I did.
Yes, they were a little more well off.
They were much more well off. And there's a whole contingent of incredible classmates of mine who I'm friends with, but who I did not have that much in common with when I got there.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even so much about like race, but I just want people to understand that there isn't necessarily an automatic affinity just because you're a Black person, I'm a Black person.
Right.
We may have had completely different upbringings.
Yes.
Many of them went to prep schools. They were ready for that experience. I had a
learning curve.
Oh, a huge learning curve.
Yeah.
And it some of it was also just realizing that when you get to those upper echelons, you're like in a group of people who the differences between you all are like, you know, it's like the cream of the cream of the crop, right? And what that means is that there's some people in that are like obviously geniuses, right?
Yeah.
And I knew some of those people. And then all the rest of y'all are just really smart.
Right.
And then the school is trying to figure out how do we differentiate between all these
Who's
really
exceptional,
smart people whose differences are just
minute,
degrees, like little tiny degrees. And how do you measure your value in that environment? How do you understand what you're supposed to get out of it? How do you excel? What, you know, I think that was a learning curve. All up until that point, I had been an achiever. Did a lot of clubs, got straight A's, did well on my tests, all that stuff. And when I got to Harvard, I was not getting straight A's anymore. Okay, I was not getting straight A's anymore.
Yeah, it was more of a challenge.
My sense of self-worth took a really big hit, and I was so embarrassed, you know, to tell my parents.
Yeah.
So
it's okay.
It was so weird.
I know. I get it.
Just living through that embarrassment was like, my parents are immigrants, and I was so embarrassed to tell them that I wasn't getting great grades.
Yeah.
And you know, they were like, "We're proud of you.
You're in Harvard, right?"
You know, they weren't like, "What are your grades?" They were like, "We're proud of you." But I felt so much shame, and then what happened was that I had to figure out, okay, what are my values? What do I want to get out of this? And it's different from where I started.
Yeah.
And that growth, I think, was life-changing. And I think what I got out of Harvard was failure. Learning to experience it, learning to accept it, learning to lean into it. Because I had been succeeding so much up until that point that when I started experiencing failure, I was like,
what is this?
What?
I relate to you so much. Like, I didn't go to Harvard, but the idea of being able to achieve so much and things coming so easy to you at a young age, it was never hard for me to get straight A's. It was never hard. Very talented in the arts. Like, anything art-wise, I can pretty much do. It all just came natural to me. And then once I took the leap to move to LA to pursue my career, it wasn't coming easy anymore. And you do feel embarrassed, and you do feel like, well, I was only good when I was at home. Who am I?
Right.
Who am I now?
And it's like, you know, failure is such an important part of life. And I've learned that obviously as I've gotten older. And when you really start to study successful people, what you realize is that it's all about your tolerance for failure.
Absolutely.
It's all about your willingness to dive into that fire,
Right.
unsure of what the outcome is going to be.
Yeah.
And so I've spent basically, I think, the rest of my life since then trying to force myself to take those risks, because my instinct is a degree of risk aversion that I think is never going to produce great results.
Right.
And so I learned that when I was in college. It was just like, you know what? I'm going to apply to this thing. And there are 10,000 super smart kids applying to the same thing, and there's a high likelihood that I will be rejected.
Yeah.
Okay, do it anyway.
Yep.
And,
And don't make it about me. And don't, if I am rejected, don't make it about.
Yes, don't
say something about me
personally, because it's like you learn things in that process. You learn about the application process. You learn what it takes to be in that pool of people. You go and you do the interview.
Yeah.
When you talk to people who are like trying to do job interviews and all of that, what I often tell them is like, apply for that job that you don't think that you're qualified for, and here's why. You go in, you do that interview, and guess what? You learn something.
Absolutely.
You learn what they're looking for. You learn the questions that they're asking, so that the next time, when it's really the job that's for you, you're prepared.
Yeah.
Again, these are like really the things that I learned in college. I took a lot of classes in a lot of other subjects.
Right. But the things you actually learned that helped you with life.
Didn't retain, maybe even half of that stuff. But this is the stuff that made me who I am. These are the lessons that I learned.
Yeah. Failure is a very interesting idea, because on one side you can say, oh, I failed at this. But then on the other side, like, what is failure? Like, is it ever actually failure? Like, not if you're growing and learning from it. Like, the analogy I always use is like when you're working out and you're weightlifting. When you first start, you're not as strong as you will become. Mm-hmm. So if I'm like, okay, I got to do 10 reps of, 60 pound, whatever weights. I got to get to 10, right? And I get to 10, but I barely get to 10. Or say I don't get to 10, say I get to 9. Is that it's not actually a failure, because the other reps that you did are strengthening you. Yes. So then the next time you're able to carry a heavier weight or to do more reps. Yeah. So when I refocused my mind around failure, and I first of all, I made it not mean something about myself, and I realized that there's so much to learn from it, and I'm actually never failing if I'm learning, then it helped, it increased my confidence, I think. Yes. And it gave me more faith to continue the process of what I need to do. And in certain circumstances, or when you're going after a dream or a goal or whatever it is to achieve whatever, you have to have a certain level of delulu attached to like what you're doing. Like, like they say, like, may your delulu come tralulu. Like, it's like, okay, I'm gonna apply for this job that I'm not qualified for. It takes a level of delulu. White men have mastered the art of delulu. They 100%. Do whatever they want, whenever they want. They're like, no, I don't. No, I've never done blah, 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 but I'm going to apply anyway, And like you said, even if you don't get it, you know what questions to ask. You know how to be prepared later. And in the world of chance, sometimes you do get it.
Yes, yeah.
Sometimes you do.
And, there's something that happens professionally when in the beginning of your career, you're like applying to things. Mm-hmm. And then as you go along, you stop applying to things.
Right.
And then it's sort of like sometimes things come to you.
Yeah.
Opportunities present themselves. And then there's a different thing that you have to start applying, which is that sometimes opportunities come to you when you don't think you're ready.
Absolutely.
Or maybe when you're not ready.
Right.
That has also happened to me.
Yep.
And figuring out, okay, what do you do now?
Right.
Do you say, I'm not ready, can't do it right now?
Absolutely not. No. Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Actually, right. Absolutely not. And then how do you approach that, right? And all of those like moments that happen before that, that's when those teachable moments really start to get applied.
Yes.
Because everything that you've lived up until that point suddenly is on the line in this thing that came to you when you maybe
didn't think you were ready, or
maybe you weren't actually ready.
Yeah, right.
Maybe you weren't actually ready, and then you might actually fail.
Right.
That might be a thing, which is fine.
Yeah.
And then you take that failure and you apply it to the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing, and as you pointed out, white men have been doing this for a millennia. Failing up.
Failing
is
up.
a thing.
Yes, it is.
And I'm not even going to hate on it because there's something about
I learned from it.
You learn from it. There's a resiliency that comes from that.
Yeah.
We should learn from it.
Absolutely.
And figure out how to make that work for us as Black people, as Black women, as women.
Yeah.
Because women don't often get a shot to fail up.
Right.
And we should.
Yes, we should.
Because failing is really learning. It's really learning. And it shifts, you know, where I was at 21, applying to jobs, and then, you know, after my first job, I was like, I gotta figure something else out. I was unhappy. I did apply to jobs at that time. And, you know, you do that for a period of time, and then you get to a point where you're not doing that, and then you have to start to be self-directed, and you start to have to create opportunities.
I was going to say, comes a point where you have to start creating your own opportunities, and that's if you want to transition from, you know, just maybe working under people or for people, you know, and you want to move up to that next level. Every new level requires something more of you. And the further you want to go, the more it's going to require of you. And I think, I'm going to sound old like you, these young folks, right, we do love y'all, but they don't realize how much it actually requires of you to be successful or just to be happy in the life that you're creating for yourself. It is not easy. It takes a lot of resilience. It takes a lot of, it also takes a lot of like personal development. Like it's not just like this existential, like that's my career over there, that's what I want. It's like something inside of the makeup of who you are, the way you see yourself, you know, your vulnerability, all those things kind of have to shift for you to get to where you want to go and be happy there. Not, some people get to where they want to go, haven't done any work on themselves, and they're miserable and whatever. But to thrive, which is, it's not just to survive. Like, I used to say that all the time. I'm tired of surviving. I don't want to just survive. I want to thrive. Yeah. And if that's the, you know, as I become, at some point, I will be like the matriarch of my family, you know? Yeah. The older you get, the more, and once you start having children and you see your parents aging, and you start to think about that. Like, oh wow, like at some point I'm gonna be like, or moving into the position of being the matriarch of my family. So what lessons, what antidotes, what is the word? Mantras do I have that I can like pass on, or what do I see like for my legacy that I can implement, you know, now, and going from struggle and striving to surviving is, or surviving to thriving is like a huge, you know, thing for me.
It is. And one other aspect of it that I think there's some nuance in it, and I think it's how much of your life is I'm enjoying, right? Yeah. And I struggle with this because I work a lot. You know, like,
I know.
And I know you understand this because as an actor, you're like, you know, it's like feast or famine. It's like when you're working, you're just working, right? And in those moments of intensity, which have happened, you know, I'm in politics, so every 4 years we have an election. Yeah. And there are all these like intense cycles, and sometimes when you're in those intense cycles, you're like, what is my life? Like, am I enjoying this?
Do I have a
am
life?
I happy?
Right.
Do I have a life?
Right. Did I give up too much?
Yeah, and I think where I've come down on this is that you are working towards something in certain seasons of your life.
Yeah.
And there are times in your life and in your career when your life is out of balance.
I say this all the time.
Okay.
I don't believe in balance.
Yeah,
Really.
There's no balance.
Yeah.
You're not like, when I was in my 20s and my friends were running around having vacations and having fun and going to, like, I was doing a little bit of that, but like I was working a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of like, what am I doing with my life? I wasn't convinced that the sacrifice was worth it.
Yeah.
And there is some sacrifice that is in there.
It's a lot.
It's a lot of sacrifice.
Yeah.
But you have to kind of be building towards something. Right? And for me, it was a degree of stability. It wasn't quantified by amount of money. It wasn't quantified by any particular job.
Yeah.
I wanted to feel secure.
Yes.
And so I was working toward that. And I knew that it would take sacrifice, and I was willing to do that. And I do think that's required too.
Yes.
That not every moment of your life is going to be enjoyable. There have been times in many different jobs that I've had where I've been miserable.
Girl.
Where I've been like, I don't like this.
Yes.
Where I'm like, I don't feel fulfilled.
I can't wait till this is
over. I don't feel like
over.
I'm doing what I want to be doing.
Yeah.
And in fact, that feeling is actually super important.
Yes, it is.
When you realize in a particular moment that you're not doing what you should be doing, that's good.
Yes.
Because then it says to you, okay, what should I be doing?
How do I get on
and how
that?
do I get there? And
Yes.
that is what you call drive.
Absolutely.
So in a way, you actually kind of need to feel that
Yes.
at some point.
Yeah. To push you. Otherwise, you'll just get in a
you'll just kinda
mundane,
like,
you'll have a mundane existence.
Yeah.
You'll stay where you're at. You're like, hey, I'm comfortable here.
Yeah.
I remember I was working at Disneyland as Princess Tiana.
Oh my God, you are Princess Tiana, for real.
I was working at Disneyland as Princess Tiana. I did, it was called Tiana Showboat Jubilee, and it was like, maybe a 2-month job. So fun on this boat. I'm singing all the songs. So fun. That was over. They called me. It was like, oh, we want you to come back, do a land version, and I'm like, okay, I'm auditioning and all that. So I'm like, sure, I'll take the job. Driving, now I lived in the Valley. Disneyland is in Anaheim. That's like an 1.5-hour drive if the traffic is decent.
Right.
If the traffic is not decent, it's about 1.45 to 2-hour drive there. But you do what you have to do. So I go, Disneyland is not as artistic as one would think. It is a corporation, okay? Yes. You have to clock in. Yeah. I didn't know what clocking in was. I went to college, I majored in theater. When I got out of college, I worked at Hertz Rent-A-Car, got fired, and then I was doing theater ever since then. There was no clocking in to anything. I am a creative at heart. I'm like, excuse me? Right, timesheet. Do you know what the traffic is like in Southern California? Like, the fact that you make people clock in is wild to me when you never know what you're gonna meet when you're in traffic, So I'm working there. I hated it, Abby. Like, when I tell you I loathed working there, and then come to find out I was pregnant. I didn't even know I was pregnant until like it was almost over. But I remember being like, why did I do this? Like, why? I don't want to work here. Like, this is terrible. I just cannot stand being here. Like, lunch breaks, this is before I knew I was pregnant, I would get so sleepy and I would need to take a nap. So I would be in my little room that they gave me, and I would take a nap, and I got reprimanded for taking a nap. You can't take a nap on the Disneyland grounds. I have to walk to my car, which is like actual miles away, to take a nap in my car. I'm just like, I can't deal with you guys. So I'm driving to Disneyland one day, and I'm like, Lord, like, I hate this job. I don't want to work here, And I just heard, my grace is sufficient. And I was like, okay. So every day on my way to that job, I would just pray, Lord, give me your grace to get through doing something that I absolutely don't want to do, because I actually know by doing things and trying things, you find out what you don't like. And it helps to, like you said, put you on the right path to getting to where you want to be. Yep. So I'm like, okay, if I don't want to be doing these jobs, because I know people who still work at Disneyland right now. Like, they've been working there for a long time. They made a career out of it. It's cool for them. But I knew for me,
it wasn't good.
This is not it. Like, I want to be acting on a different level. So I need to, once I'm done with this, let me put thanks and gratitude into this job instead of being completely miserable all the time. Let me do my best here, and then make sure that whatever moves I make after this never lead me back to there.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to be there.
Yeah, because, I mean, you do need to know what you don't want to do. But the ability to do it, like, I actually think that the other part of that story is another thing that people don't really get. But you carried it through until it was time for you to move on to the next thing.
I didn't just quit. I didn't quit. I don't like it.
A lot of people would have quit.
Yeah.
They would have just been like, I hate this. Here's my 2 weeks. I'm out.
Right.
And look, I mean,
there's a place for that too.
There's a place for that too, if that's what you need to do. But there is also something to be said for you see it through until you're ready to move into something else. Because in a way, the dislike should be driving you toward your real
working harder.
Purpose,
absolutely.
Right? And I mean, there have been a lot of jobs that I've had where I've not liked it. There have been jobs that I've had that I started it and I thought it was great, and then eventually it gets bad. And usually when that happens, it's just, I'm like, okay, it's time for me to start thinking about
my
what's
next move. Yeah.
Thinking about what's next. But I also think some people are more built for that than others. Like, I don't discount the degree to which, you're here and I'm here because we do have a certain drive that pushes us toward that. But I also think that it's a discipline, and life is a discipline.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's funny enough, like in the arts, I grew up in a pretty musical family. I played the violin, sang in college, all of that. And I was thinking about this the other day because I was like, when we moved to New York, I started to try to teach myself the piano again because I studied it when I was really little. And, I'm sitting there and I'm trying to like relearn these old songs that I used to know. And, you get older, so it does not come back to you
as quickly
as it used to. But I was just thinking about practice and about what it means to practice and how you like have to do a thing badly over and over and over again in order to make even like a stanza of improvement sometimes.
So true.
And that discipline, I think, is a metaphor in a lot of ways for life.
Yes.
Where, the discipline that it takes to sit in front of a piano or an instrument and just work at, stanza by stanza over and over and over again, do it 10 times right before you move on, is like, that's what life can be like sometimes. Like, you just have to just do the thing and do the thing and do the thing and do the thing. And then eventually it starts to improve. And then eventually you'll be ready for the next one. And eventually you'll be ready to take on the more intermediate piece. I think as I get older, sometimes I'm tempted to lose that discipline.
Absolutely.
But you have to stick with it because when you get to the point where you don't want to practice anymore.
Oh my God, yeah. Girl, I'm trying to instill that hard. I'm trying to instill it into my children, my boys. My oldest is 13. He plays basketball. And, this generation, they have YouTube. They're watching all this stuff. They're learning all these moves and tricks and stuff. And they're not learning the fundamentals. There is something to learning the fundamentals. Oh, I know how to do a layup. No, you don't. No, you don't. Unless you can make 150 layups in a row, you don't know how to do it.
Yeah, there's no
Stop doing behind the back and finger rolling and all that shit. Stop. Do a regular layup. 150 times in a row and make every basket. And then we can move on to, then you can say you know how to do a layup.
Because you know what professional athletes are not doing. They're not practicing.
No, they're still doing fundamentals.
Doing that full time.
You have to.
That's what they do. The game is only but a small sliver.
Yeah, all that
of what
fun frills and all that kind of stuff is a very small piece of what you actually need to be successful. And that's the same even in my career. You know, I have a one-woman play. If I cannot say my lines, like one of the exercises we have is a speed through. So when you're doing a play, it's usually like Tuesday through Sunday. You know, you're off on Mondays or whatever, and then when you start production or you start doing the play, a lot of times it's like maybe Wednesday through. So when you have your 2 days off, you come back, you get there early, and you do a speed through. So you say your lines as fast as possible with no emotion, no frills, no real acting. You just say the line as quick as possible, you know, just to get through the play. But if you can't say your lines fast, you don't know them. You don't know them.
Yeah. If you have to think about it before the
If you have to think about it, then you don't know it. And so that is all these things are really great lessons in life. It's boring. People ask me, "Oh, you love acting?" Absolutely. Do I love learning lines? Absolutely not.
Right.
Am I bored on set? Absolutely. I'm sitting there waiting.
It is boring.
I'm doing the same lines over and over and over, take after take after take after take. There are things about it that become mundane, that become boring. So you have to. It can't always be about what's fun and what makes you feel.
Not even in the slightest. I mean, that part about the boringness of it all. I mean, that's, people are like, what is it like to be on TV? And it's like, well, a lot of times we're just sitting there.
Yeah.
I mean, when we are, you know, election nights, you know, it's sometimes long stretches of time when you're doing nothing and you don't even know what's coming next. But it's all of the things that you prepared for, all of the things that you did leading up to it, lead up to that one moment where you're on TV for 2.5 minutes and you have to say that one thing.
Yeah.
And all the moments in between, nobody talks about.
Right.
But those moments are there too.
They're leading you to that.
To do it. And you have to be willing to do the mundane things, the boring things, the things that nobody would find interesting at all.
Right.
Because the real test comes in the moments when all that preparation leads up to something.
Yes, the performance comes up to the performance. So how has it been? You know, I know journalism in general, there's not a ton of us, especially not on camera. What challenges have you faced in terms of just being a Black woman in this space? And then that's the one part of the question. And the other part of the question is, was there like a point where you felt like any pressure or like this responsibility to like, you know, because you're in this position, because you're a Black woman, a lot of us feel this weight of like, I have to be this or that because I'm representing my entire race. You know, in what ways have you dealt with that or struggled with that?
I think that pressure is there, whether you like it or not, right?
Yeah.
And some of it is because, especially, we do a lot of politics on our show. And in the political realm, it's like a lot of Black people are like, you need to have this point of view.
Right.
Otherwise, you don't represent, you know,
you're not for the culture.
Or you need to have this point of view and express it, when sometimes my job is not actually to express a point of view at all.
Right, you're having guests on your show that express their point of view.
And I think that actually that is, you know, there are a lot of people who are in the journalism realm. It gets increasingly fewer when you're talking about people who are not like explicitly partisan, where that's not the objective. And I think that that's a hard position to be in. I think that when I as a political journalist, just in general, on TV, not on TV, the thing that you encounter the most is that Republicans assume that you're a Democrat because you're black. Democrats assume that you're a Democrat because you're black. And so there are racial things that get imposed upon you because of your skin color that I think you have to constantly navigate around on both sides of the political aisle.
Right.
And so that's a thing that we don't talk enough about. But it's real. And there are not that many of us on television. I think that we as a society in this country, it is more difficult for people of color to be broadly accepted by people of all different races and backgrounds. It's just harder.
Yeah.
Okay? And you see it every day. People look at you and they're like, why does she do it that way? Or why does she do it, this way? And she is just so dumb. And, I mean, everybody has their biases and they bring those biases. And I think that we are still a country where people look at black folks, some people, and they think that person's not very smart.
Absolutely.
And just a reality.
Yeah.
Does it change the way I go about my job? No.
Right.
Because what am I supposed to do about that? Nothing.
Nothing. And it's not my job to prove to you that I'm smart.
Yeah. And I think that just professionally, I mean, I think that there's the audience that watches television and what they think about you does matter to a degree. It influences the ratings and all that stuff. But it's actually more important what's happening within your organization.
I see.
And we all navigate different degrees of corporate environments. And I think that black people, Hispanic people, Asian people, we all actually, the thing that we have to learn how to do is actually navigate what's happening in our corporations.
Yeah.
Learning how to strategize about your career, how to build alliances, how to add value, how to use leverage in negotiations. And learning how to do that, I mean, that's a whole other ballgame, right?
Yeah.
But all I can reflect on about that experience of navigating, going from print to being in television, which is, TV is way more of a kind of who likes you and who doesn't game, because, in television, there might be just one person who decides your fate. Maybe because they like you, they like your style.
Right.
And then you might have another boss who doesn't like you and doesn't like your style. How do you navigate those things as a black person who's not going to have a lot of
options,
allies around you, and people who don't really understand you or what you bring to the table? Maybe they don't see you. I've had bosses who really saw me, who were not black.
Yeah, absolutely.
Actually, the only way I could have gotten here is because I had a lot of non-black bosses who saw me.
Right.
And said, you are talented.
Yeah.
And learning how to see that happening and to cultivate it and to go to those people and to have a degree of honesty and say to them, this is what I hope for and how can we align? And being able to trust people that you don't fully understand or who may not fully understand you. There's a whole, you could teach a whole seminar on the politics of that, but all I will say to younger people, if they're wondering what it's really like, is that you're never going to be in a place in this industry where everybody around you is rooting for you.
Oh, never. Never in this world.
It's never going to be in that in this world.
Yeah.
And you're never going to be in a place where there are people of color in strategic positions at every juncture helping you.
No.
So don't have that expectation. What really needs to happen is that you have to learn how to navigate those uncomfortable relationships.
Absolutely.
And you have to learn how to build those alliances with people who you have nothing in common with.
Yeah, they don't look like you.
They don't look like you. And you have to recognize the people who don't get you and say, I don't need to hate this person, but they're not going to help me.
They're not a part of my journey.
Let me preserve the relationship but focus my energy on these other people.
Yeah.
And work your organization because it's not always even going to be your hard work, actually.
Okay, right. So true.
I grew up thinking, work hard.
You'll get what you
succeed.
want. Right.
Definitely work hard.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying don't work hard,
Yeah.
but working hard is not enough.
No, it's not.
You need to understand the people around you.
Mm-hmm.
You need to understand your organization. You need to make options for yourself. You need to think about the outside world and how you create leverage.
Right.
Because all those people that you see in your organization who've been there for 20 years, don't think for a second they didn't think about what else was going on in their industry and use that leverage to move up.
Yeah.
So get smart.
Yeah.
Because I had to get smart in ways that I never imagined that I would have to do. And, you know, it's just as you move through those levels, it's like you figure it out. But I didn't think this would be my life when I started out.
Right.
But you gotta meet the moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to meet the moment. And if you're not willing to meet the moment, recognize that in yourself and figure out where you need to be and go do that.
Right.
But if you're gonna rise, you gotta meet the moment at every turn.
Yeah, I love that. I love that answer. It's a different take on, because it is important to know, like you said, there's not gonna be a person that looks like you or has the same, and like you said about being at Harvard, some of those, you don't connect with every black person you don't connect with.
Yes.
And they don't help you.
They're not always.
They're not always gonna
I've
help
had
you.
women bosses who've been terrible.
Man, okay. Yes.
I've had black bosses who've
Yes, absolutely.
been terrible. You got to figure yourself out in your organization and be strategic and keep your eyes wide open and understand, there might be unspoken things that you cannot do anything about.
Right.
But that's not to say that you cannot be smart and navigate your way through.
Make the most of
and
your
make
opportunities.
the most of your opportunities. And we all hope that one day we're not dealing with some of these invisible things that we're dealing with, right? That day is not here, but that does not mean that we're all just sitting back and we're like, woe is me.
Right, exactly.
You know, I will never. I stopped saying that a long time ago.
Absolutely, yeah.
My philosophy is what's for me is for me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be as strategic as possible at every juncture.
Yeah.
And whatever happens, it's God's will, and you know, you just do your best.
Awesome. Well, lastly, let's talk about you're a mommy and you're a wife, and you are a star. So how do you
opening up a whole other...
How do you navigate that? Like, you know, has it been challenging? I mean, most of the viewers of this podcast know my story about momming and being a star. But, you know, how are you handling it? You know, I know you guys moved from Maryland from DC
to here, which is a big move. It's been about a year, and I mean, they're trade-offs, right?
Yeah.
I mean, being a mom is the very best thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
Okay, it's life-changing in some amazing ways, and it is hard.
Yeah.
And there's no rule book for how you do that and manage a big job and manage a marriage and all that comes with that, the ups and the downs and all of that.
Yeah.
And I will say, like, we've been really blessed because I know a lot of people, friends of mine, who've gone through all kinds of things. They've gone through losses and illnesses, and we've been very lucky. So I start from that place of just being really grateful for the life that we have. But, you know, I think that one thing, I was thinking about this recently, as a mother, as a woman, I'm in my mid-30s, who has a big career and a family. Mm-hmm. One thing you realize and you have to accept is that there are some things you can't do.
Yeah.
And there's some things that you don't want to do.
Absolutely.
And there are some, you know, I do often think about this, if I were like single and childless, living in the city, my life would be different.
Absolutely.
Okay? It would be extremely different. And there would be some amazing things about that. Mm-hmm. But I can say with 100% certainty that the life that I have right now is the most fulfilled life that I could ever have hoped for.
Absolutely.
And so it's not an either or thing. More power to the young women who are like, I'm doing me.
Yeah, no kids,
Okay,
no hubby.
whatever.
Yeah.
Like I'm totally cool with that. But I also think that I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I'm okay with some of the things that I have to do differently because I'm a mom.
Yeah.
And I also think, I was thinking back to my early 20s because my husband and I met when I was like 22.
Okay.
Which is crazy. Crazy. But he and I met when I was 22. And I remember I was in a really bad place at work. I was feeling like a failure at my job. I had a very difficult boss. There was a lot going on in my personal life with my family. And I remember when I met him, first of all, I told him, I was like, look, I don't really feel like being in a relationship right now, so we're gonna do this as long as like I continue to enjoy it.
Right.
But if I stop
gets
enjoying
weird,
it, I'm just gonna let you know, and we will part ways.
Right.
And one of the things about him that I don't know, maybe this is gonna come across as a not feminist, is like he really helped me. He helped build my self-confidence at a really critical moment in my life.
Your partner should do that, I think, but that's
right. I think that should happen, but it came for me at a really important time when I was feeling very low and feeling like I was gonna fail, like maybe I needed to leave journalism, like I just didn't know what was gonna happen. And he would often just be the voice that said, "You're amazing. You're so good.
Yeah.
You're a star."
Yeah.
Like, and I was like, "What are you talking about?" At that stage, I was not a star. Okay.
But you
I
were.
Like, what are you talking about? Like,
right.
Stop. And he never stopped saying that.
Yeah.
And so the power of these relationships and these sort of entanglements, I think some people might think relationships can hold you back, and they can. But
if you allow them to.
Yeah, if you allow them to, and if they're not the right relationships. Right. But they can also build you up.
Absolutely.
At really important moments. And first of all, you should look for a partner that does that.
Absolutely.
Okay? Like, let's normalize selecting a partner that builds you up.
Absolutely. Okay?
All these other things matter way less than a partner who is emotionally invested in you,
believes in you, and wants to elevate you, not stifle you or keep you at a certain place.
Because when I was 22, did we think that we would be sitting here in New York City and I would be anchoring a show on CNN? No. And where he was in his life is a world away from where he is now. Where I was then is a world away from where we are now.
And you need to be in a relationship with someone who sees in you what you don't necessarily see in yourself. Exactly. Whether it's friendships, a partner, family members, but especially a life partner. Yes. They have to see in you what you don't see in yourself. And having that kind of support it makes or breaks where you will end up. It truly, truly does. Totally. And there are a lot of men in the world who offer that kind of leadership. Yes, that is leadership. That is leadership. Yes, they always talk about men being the leader of the family. And, I'm probably not going to sound like a feminist right now either. But, they talk about, men being the leaders of the family. I believe men should be the leaders. What leadership truly is, though, I think that gets misconstrued sometimes. But true leadership is seeing your woman, seeing how amazing she is, and planting seeds of encouragement and building her up and telling her you're going to be this and that.
That's a reciprocal thing. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You both are doing that for each other.
Right.
Because the thing about life is that there are all these ups and downs to it. And I always knew, there would be moments in my career when he was leaning in, and when I was like in a plateau, and when I needed to lean in, and what it's turned out to be is that I've been kind of on this crazy treadmill for a while now, and through it all, that grounding has been so instrumental. And I don't really know if I would be sitting here without that encouragement, because I did need somebody in my life to say, basically altruistically, without wanting anything in return, you can do this? And because sometimes you don't get that. You're not getting that from your friends because they don't really understand. You're not getting that from your bosses or your mentors.
Right.
And so the wife, the mom part of my life, they are like the building blocks for the complexity that I can bring to my work, to who I am as a person. I think I would be so much more one-dimensional if I didn't have those elements of my life. And you can gain complexity as a person in all kinds of different ways.
Absolutely.
There's some people who their whole life is complexity.
Right.
They don't need a partner or a child.
Right.
And whatever it is for you is for you. But for me, I think it has really enriched what I bring to the table.
Yeah.
And even to be prepared for this stage of my career where, as an introvert, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with being the person that is talked about.
Yeah, being on the red carpet.
I struggle with it even to this day. But I think that the fact that I do have this sort of body of personal experiences that I don't mind sharing, because I think it's beautiful and complex and not always perfect. And there's a lot of my life that I have not even shared. We all know what it's like to be in a marriage, and it's not
great
always
all the
perfect,
time.
right?
Absolutely.
And being a parent, it's not always perfect, and there's so many aspects of it where you're like, what am I doing?
Who am I?
Who am I? And is this really worth it? My kid is wondering where I am.
Yeah.
And my daughter the other day, she was like, Mommy, Daddy is always here, and you're always going.
Ooh, it hurts.
It
hurts my heart.
Because when they start to talk, they're they really talk.
My sons are older than your daughter, but recently, my oldest, who's 13, he's like, Mom, so after this season of your show, this is season 5, right? I'm like, yeah. He's like, so after this season, is it done? And I was like, well, I don't know. I might get another season. He was like, I said, you don't want me to do. He was like, I want you to work. I want you to be an actor because it's what you love and you're really good at it. He was like, but I just want you to do it here.
Yeah. And when she said that to me, I was like, well, I don't think this was the right response, but I said,
I said, listen, you're not getting none of them gifts you get if I don't work.
That's basically what I said. I was like, well, don't you want,
Just press the key. Okay.
I was like, well, don't you want to be able to go to the school that you love and go to gymnastics and and Mommy works so that
you can do that.
All of these other things.
Right.
And I'm like, wow, that sounds terrible.
Right. Well, because you feel so bad, you don't know what to say.
The right answer.
Girl, I know. And I've said it too. I've been like, well, the way we live and the things you're able to do is because Mommy has to work. But now I'm at a place where I'm like, I understand, baby.
Yeah.
I understand. I want to be here too.
And I think that is the right answer.
Yeah.
That is the right answer.
Yeah.
And it's the connection. All they're saying is Mommy, I miss you. Mommy,
Absolutely.
I want you to be nearby. And as hard as it is to hear that, it is important for them to experience it.
Yeah.
And for that feeling to be validated.
Right.
And for you to respond by saying, I love you and I want to be with you too.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah,
I don't know. There's no silver bullet to it that okay, so now I'm going to turn the world upside down and I'm going to be home all the time.
And there's going to be those ebbs and flows. You know, there was a time when I wasn't a working actress. I was a stay-at-home mom that auditioned. Mm-hmm. And when they were the ages of being infants up to about the age of 9, I was pretty much at home. Yeah. This is a different season. There will come another season where they are going to leave home.
And then you're gonna be
and I'm gonna be like, well, why can't you?
When I was a kid, we lived in Trinidad and Tobago, which is where my parents were from, and I was born here. And and my parents moved back when I was a kid. So when I was like 8, my mom and my dad both left to come up here to bring the whole family up. And they left for a while. And I remember when we were a little older, we would talk about this period, and my sisters and I would say, "Oh my God, my parents, our parents were gone for years." And my mom was like, "We were gone for like 2 months." And we were like, "No, it was
a long
years.
time.
It was a long time." And I like that in my mind.
It
like
was
that
2
period
years.
felt like forever. It felt like they were gone forever.
Yeah.
And we missed them, and we were sad, and we were like, but they were sacrificing to bring, they came up so that they could find a place for us to live, and so they could get jobs, and so that they can, when they were ready, we could come up and
have a life.
Yeah. And if that sticks with me, and I think it informs my willingness to sacrifice for my family.
Me too.
To do whatever it takes, because I know that they did that.
Yeah.
And my dad worked nights, and he worked long shifts, and my mom worked in people's homes, and they did a lot of things that were enormous sacrifices. They went from running several businesses in Trinidad to having nothing here and starting
just to give you guys a better life. Yeah.
And it informs everything that I do, and I know that the sacrifices that actually my daughter is making are real, but they are small by comparison to, I think, what she needs to be willing to do in order to achieve greatness in her
own life. Absolutely.
So, we are teaching as we make these trade-offs in our lives, and I think that's part of it.
I'm really happy at this point in my life to be making relationships and connections with other women who are in similar positions that I'm in, because starting off, love my childhood friends, love my friends back home and stuff like that, but I have a different life.
Yes, it is.
And you love your family, you love all of those people, but you get into a very lonely place where you're like, I don't know who to talk to about these things, because they don't get it. They think you're just out living your best life and enjoying everything. They're not thinking like, dang, Danny's probably really lonely there in New York without her kids. Yes. I should check on her. And so meeting other moms that are New York for you, meeting other moms who have children who are successful in their careers, who are doing what they know is best for them to do, and thriving. It makes me feel like, okay, I have a community, and we can lift each other up and support one another, on that journey.
The last thing I'll say is that, I guess one of the things I tell myself in my own head all the time is that women have done this before.
Absolutely.
We've done it before. And as lonely as I do feel sometimes, I look around and I'm looking around in prime time, and nobody else in prime time is a woman with a 3-year-old, right?
Right.
And that's a certain lifestyle, and there's not a lot of, who am I going to turn to? I mean, there are women with kids who in the mornings, but it's but there have been women who have done variations of this before,
right?
Who've had little ones, who've made these professional trade-offs, and we get through it.
Yeah.
It can be done,
right,
even as lonely as it feels.
Absolutely.
In the moment.
Absolutely.
So it's important.
It's important to know that, for sure. Thank you so much for that. Last little thing, what does Abby do to make herself feel proud?
Oh God, to feel proud. I've been kind of reconnecting with my hobbies. And this summer I was feeling really depleted because of I've been traveling a lot for work, and it was conventions and all that stuff. And the show was just really intense, and I took up my sourdough habit again.
I saw that. I was like, "Ooh, that bread look good."
So now
it looks so good.
Some bread on the weekends, because God knows I don't eat it. There's not enough.
Right, I barely eat bread, but I was like, it looks so
and
good.
I just bake to bake. There's nobody to eat it.
Wow.
I just and I don't know. That's probably not the most inspiring answer.
I love that.
It's the little things.
Yeah.
that's the thing about me as a person, is that there's all these aspects of my life. Like some people like to go out to dinner and to clubs and to shows.
Yeah.
I like to be in my house.
Yeah.
I buy flowers at the corner bodega. I arrange my own flowers. I make sourdough bread, and I do things that fill my cup.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I learned about myself a long time ago that what fills my cup is not the same thing that fills other
Yes,
people's cups.
absolutely.
And I've been doing that, and I have really enjoyed it, because sometimes I feel guilty doing that, because I'm like, oh, I got to edit this thing. I have to do this. I have to do that. But, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to bake some bread this weekend, because it's relaxing to me.
Yeah.
It's a stress reliever.
Absolutely.
And when it turns out good, I feel good about myself. When
I
it
think
doesn't turn out good,
right. I think when you're a high achiever and you're always nonstop, go, and you're getting acclaim from people and you're whatever, people think it's so amazing to be in the positions that we're in, but I think when you're in that position, the little things mean more. So I was given an orchid by one of my best friends when I bought my new home in Sacramento. She gave me that orchid on October 28th, 2024. The orchid is still alive today.
Yes, there you go.
There's no dead flowers on it. It is like flourishing. Yes. I am so proud of myself for keeping that orchid alive, because I love plants, I love flowers, and I've had many orchids that I just could not figure out how to keep it alive past like a week or a couple weeks. And my sister-in-law went to my house to get the mail, and I was like, can you put some ice cubes in my orchid, And so she's like, yes, Danielle. She's laughing at me. I said, can you take a picture of it? Like, is it dead, And so she sends me the picture, and it is like thriving. And I'm like, this means something about my life. Like, I'm like making it mean something spiritual about my life. But in those little things, like baking gingerbread cookies from scratch, those little things bring me, like, I feel proud of myself today.
I think this is like one of the reasons that when we were at Bevy's dinner, we kind of connected. It's like I can like spot like a nurturer.
Yes.
From a mile away, like, and I'm that person. I'm like, I like to take care of plants. I like to make food. I like to host. I like to, those are the things that make me feel good. Yeah. Is just like a little thing where I feel like I can pour something into it and it flourishes. Get something out of it for my soul.
Absolutely.
Not for my career, not for any other reason than it just makes me feel a little bit more fulfilled. And that's what I focus on, and I don't try to be anybody else. I think the more that you try to like emulate what other people are doing to show that they're like doing well and happy or whatever. Right. The more empty those gestures become. Yeah. And the things that make me happy are the most simple of things. I had a couple hours yesterday. I made banana bread muffins with my daughter. Yeah. Just really, really simple things.
Yep. That's what makes it all worth it. Thank you, Abby.
Thank you.